Hey everybody, JK here from Animator Island. Welcome to today's live stream. We'll start things off with a little note from the chat. Ito says, weird, crazy, screaming raptor face, I think. Is that what that is? Anyway, welcome to the live stream, everybody. Today is going to be a rather short one. I am going to do some coloring in Procreate on creatures for the upcoming Weekend Panda game Cardfire. We sort of touched on that and went through some of the techniques that I used last time in one of the live streams. Hailey's here. Hey, Hailey. And yeah, so we're just going to kind of jump right into that. And if anybody has any questions about what I'm doing or, art and animation in general, or you just want to chat, feel free to post away in the chat. And we'll see how things go. Okay. Sharing some live screen windows. There we go. Okay. So as you can see here, I still have some of the creatures greened out that are the new ones, or I think they're all new. I'm pretty sure they're all new. So we're just keeping those spoiler free. So at this point, I have 6, it looks like, that I still have to color, and I can do live because they're existing creatures that people know about. But I will say this, I have been working through all 50 of these creatures, and the ones that are still here are the ones that I'm like dragging my feet on, and I keep not finishing. So I'm whittled in. I keep doing the ones that I want to do, and these are the ones that I, for some reason, I'm just like hesitant to do. So let's just jump in. We're going to go with Tanglefoot here. Um, as I've said in previous or in the last live stream that I did, the original creature design from the series is up in the corner there. And then we have the new one here that's kind of, this one's, reasonably changed. It's still got the essence of the original, but we have gone through a bit of a change here. And this is one of the white creatures. I have just a handful of like white color creatures and black color creatures. And when working with a more monochromatic palette, I find that it's trickier to do the whole uh, like gradient shading thing because I'm gonna have to add some color in. I don't want to just add a black and white gradient because that's just not going to be very visually interesting. So that's one of the reasons I put off this particular character for a while because I didn't want to. I just didn't want to make decisions. But if we color pick this character, you'll see that I have just a hint of yellow. So I'll probably go ahead with some like oranges maybe and try and add just a very subtle. I'm going to keep things super subtle on this one. Just kind of add a very subtle kind of gradient to the bottom here. And this already muddies it up a bit. So I'm going to definitely go back in and tweak things. I'm going to play with some settings. And then also, I'm almost assuredly going to drop the opacity because I don't want it to be muddy. So we're just kind of flipping through all our different settings here, or all over. Oh, that's interesting. Change it more yellow. So working on color here, I actually don't mind how that kind of turns out. So I might, let me go back to normal real quick. Yeah, so that just kind of lightens it up a little bit, and I don't mind that. So I still think I'm going to knock it down to 90% opacity, but we'll keep it like that, I think. And that I might need to knock it down a little more. I really want to keep the character kind of that snowy white, and it's tricky. Lipu says, "Do you teach regularly at the same time?" No. Or teach regularly at, yeah. I assume that you're asking if this is a regularly scheduled live stream. No, Ferdinand and I both tend to just jump on when we can and do a live stream. However, I had been doing one regularly on Mondays, and then I potentially got Lyme disease. And so next Tuesday, I have blood work tests to see if that was the case. And I'm hopeful that with the medicine I'm on, it will resolve soon. And if it does, then I will get back to a regularly scheduled live stream, probably on Mondays, but I'm open for changing the day. So if anybody has any thoughts on what time, specifically, if you put what time zone to and what day works for folks, then maybe we'll be able to tailor it once it's time to come back to regularly scheduled live streams. But for now, it's just kind of when we get a chance. All right, so I'm gonna do a smidgen of yellow up at the top of this character, but I'm gonna have to go back and I'm gonna erase away what was over top of the eyes because I really want to keep the eyes the color that they were / are. So I want to make sure that nothing is interfering with those parts. All right, so that'll work. And then I'm going to once again go back in and start playing with some layer settings and see if there's something that works. Go even more white with add. It's not. It's kind of interesting. Maybe I'll do that. For now, that will work. So obviously, this creature is not going to have as dramatic coloring as some of the others, but I do want to go in and add some shading. So we'll do one more clipping mask, and then we'll go down to a dark purple, and we'll put in some shading. So for this character, since it's rounded, I'm going to start out by going with, up this size. I'm going to start out by going with a general shadow that goes across the whole thing. And then I'm going to go back in and kind of erase some fuzz, because this is a kind of furry, fuzzy creature. And so I will go back in afterwards and erase bits so that it can represent that fuzz. But I do think that there should be a little bit of shadow right under the mouth here on the tongue and just under there. I think that will add a nice little bit of fun to it. And then maybe we'll toss in just a little bit of shading on these furry bits that are hanging out, and probably want to do some underneath here too. And then I will set this to, what do I set it to? Whoops. I will set this to soft light, I think. So what we do? Yeah, soft light. Actually, soft light for this one is not very dramatic. So what I may do is double up on it. Let's see what happens there. But we're getting that really yellowish color, so I'm not sure. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to double up on it. First, I'll finish up what I'm doing on this particular layer, but I think I'm gonna have to double up on it. Okay, so so with that kind of curved shadow in place, I'm going to go back in afterwards, and I'm just going to erase some extra parts that will kind of represent the fur and the fuzz of this creature. And I'm just kind of picking and choosing where I'm going to put them. There's no necessarily rhyme or reason to it. It's just to kind of add a bit more texture and see how it goes. And I can always go back in and fill it in if I want to, and it's, no problem there. But I think that just adding a little bit of extra, texture here will give it that fuzzy feeling that I'm after for this particular character. So I'm just taking out bits, and then I think here we'll maybe take it down to there, see what that looks like. No, I don't like that. That's probably okay. And well, whoops, that was not what I wanted to do. I need to go back to purple. Here's a tip that is very helpful to know. Anytime you can combine shadows, you should, or generally at least try it, because the more little tiny shadows you have, the less of a whole it will feel. So anytime you can kind of connect little shadows. So this part underneath that I just did, if you can see, I'll darken it in a second. But I wanted to keep those shadows connected instead of having it like be out on its own thing. That will just help to make everything unified a little bit more. Maria says, hi all, working remotely today and tomorrow. So could be in and out of the stream. Good deal. I think you're working like all the time remotely, or yeah, right? Or it seems like it. I'm glad you got to stop by. But I feel like every time you're working remotely, so you're in and out, but that's a good thing. I also work remotely. Um, a few years ago, my wife and I went full time on freelance, and mostly we separate our time between freelance, both art and software engineering, web design, and things like that, which is what my wife does, and game development, which is what we're working on here, the art end of the game development. So the working remotely is definitely a nice thing. All right, so remember I said it's good if you can keep shadows together. So what I think I'm going to try and do is connect these bits a little bit more. And I think that will be better. You don't have to connect all of them, but if you can connect them, it can be uh, a very good thing for the overall feel of the piece. Okay, so I think I'm gonna leave it at that for right now, and I'm gonna duplicate it and then drop the opacity on this one down to about 50%. So we've kind of got duplicate by 1/2. And then I'm probably going to leave it there. Now on my, I have the iPad in front of me, and then I have everything on the screen in front of me here, and it looks very different between the two screens. So I really like it on the iPad, but I'm not as big a fan of it on the monitor, but that's okay. We'll see. Maria is doing remote 2 days out of 5 until September. So good deal. Oh, only 1 day remote after Labor Day. That's no good. We have to let me know what day that is so we can definitely have a live stream that day. Um, well, it was nice while it lasted, right? And who knows, maybe in the future you'll be able to do more remote stuff too. You never know. Okay, so I think because this character is relatively simple, and we don't have a ton going on, I'm going to try something. I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to try and add some uh, just a light shading to the eyes, just to see what happens. I'm not necessarily married to this, but I'm going to see if it adds something that I like and kind of just gives a little more dimension to this character because it's not a whole lot going on here. And I want to keep things visually interesting. So I'm going to fill that part in, and then I'm going to erase out these bits, and we're just going to see what happens. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No big deal. But if it adds a little bit of visual interest, then terrific. So let's see if we put it down on soft light maybe, or yeah, put it on soft light, and then we go down to about 50%. So then the question becomes, do I like this more? Or do I like it more graphic without that? And I don't know. I think I like it more without. So it was an attempt. Didn't work in my opinion. So we're going to leave it this way. And I can always go back in and turn it on later if I want. Luca says, it's Procreate. Yes, I'm currently working with Procreate. That is almost exclusively what I work in now, at least not when I'm not doing animation. In animation, I still do a few different things, mostly Toon Boom, or whatever Ferdinand wants to work in, because if we work on something together, I just try and work in whatever he's working on. But for art in general now, I am almost exclusively in Procreate. I do graphic design work in Affinity Designer, which is a terrific program. So if you don't know the Affinity suite of programs, definitely check that out. I don't get paid for it or anything. I just really like it. So I'm always happy to recommend Affinity. Really glad that I left Adobe behind because Adobe now charges you for your entire life every month. And I was like, no, thank you. So the Affinity suite is very good. But in terms of painting and inking and drawing and all that sort of stuff, it's pretty much entirely Procreate. And then Lipu says, how to decide the shape of the shadow? Is there any fixed ratio for shadow? Okay, So, as I mentioned in the previous stream, but I'll speak to it again. For this particular game and this particular art style, I am kind of making things up. I'm not necessarily doing what would be accurate. Because I'm working more graphically, I don't I don't feel like I have to make the shadows super realistic, or even lending themselves to reality. So sometimes, like the shadow I put on the underside of the eyes right there, that's just for graphic sake. Like there's no real reason for me to do that. However, traditionally, if you are going to decide on things like the shape of the shadow and ratios of shadow to light and things like that, you're going to first pick your primary light source. And so for this particular image, the primary light source is going to probably be coming down this way to a degree. But again, I'm kind of fudging things, so you can't take that uh, exclusively. And then from there, you're going to look at the forms of the character. In this case, we've got a very rounded shape, so it's relatively easy. Uh, and you're going to basically, that's when you would decide how much you want to put into shadow versus how much you want to leave out of shadow. And that'll be related to how bright the light is. It'll be related to the size of the light. Like if it's more of a spotlight, you're going to get a different effect than if it's a very um, well, a fill light. It's very broad, reaching. All those things are going to change the shadows that you use. But in terms of how to decide the shape, typically the shape of the character or the object is going to exclusively decide what the shape of the shadow is going to be. And there, I can't recommend more than enough doing some life studies. If you can at all, this is a really good thing to do. Get yourself a few basic shapes, like some spheres, a couple tennis balls or something. Anything. It's even better if you can get a rubber ball because tennis balls are textured. But get just simple shapes, and then get like a desk lamp, like the Pixar lamp, and shine it down and turn out the other lights, and then do some studies of where the shadows hit, and it will really really help you as you're developing more complex characters because everything ends up being made up of basic shapes that are jammed together into more complicated shapes. So that the character or the object will determine the size. But in terms of the ratio, how much shadow you use, that's kind of an artistic decision. Because if I wanted to, I could make most of this character in shadow. Let me do that real quick just for fun, because why not? We're here to just chat for a bit. So what do I want to do? I need to, we will turn the whole character purple. And then we're going to drop the opacity, let's say like that. Now, if I might, if I wanted to, put the whole character in shadow and then erase away the bits that I want to be in with a bit of light on them. So, and this is just super rough, so you'll forgive me for that. But so in this instance, the ratio, and kind of have to turn off these other ones. The ratio would be almost entirely shadow, right, and very little in light, and that's just an artistic decision. So you just have to kind of decide for yourself what you want to do with that. All right, let me turn that off and turn the background off, and then we'll call that one done, and we'll move on to the next one. I think it's Sorrow here, who I love, and I think that's one of the reason that I haven't moved on to shading this character is that I really like this character and I don't want to mess it up. So there's a little bit of a fear element there. I'm just like, if I just never touch it, then it'll be fine. Couple more comments. Luca says, yes, I like Harmony a lot, but I've been going to Moho, cheaper, and I've had great results. Well, yeah, absolutely. Honestly, and we have an article at least about this. I'm not sure if there's a video too, but in Animator Island, we are big proponents of whatever software works for you is the one you should use. Almost entirely do that because what you don't want is to have a program that you hate and so you never use it. right? Like that's just, you don't want to do that. Now, there are some exceptions. If some program is really, really bad and it's going to hurt you long term, then you probably want to learn a different one. But if it's a decent animation program, then you should just use it. Whatever works for you, absolutely do that. And then uh, Lassell says, "Hi, would you recommend Krita for drawing? If not, what other free software?" Yes, absolutely. I would recommend Krita. Krita is what I had used for many years until I got Procreate and the iPad. I'm fortunate to have a Cintiq over here on the side. And so I did almost all of my drawing and painting in Krita before I moved over to Procreate. And in my opinion, from experience, Krita is the best free drawing and painting software that I have come across. There are other ones, and again, if it works for you, then use something else. But if you don't know Krita, or if you already are using Krita, I definitely recommend Krita. It's really good, and they constantly work to make it better, which I really appreciate. You know, some companies will kind of just rest on their laurels a little bit, but Krita, the team behind Krita, is constantly working hard to continue to make it better. So definitely recommend Krita. You bet. And last comment, Ito says these characters feel very Flash. I agree. It's good to hear the old name Flash. Um, I have a background in Flash animation. That's what I taught myself on. It's a very long story, but the short version is after high school, I went to college for animation and totally flunked out because I didn't want to be there. I was over school. I was like, no, I'm done. So I left school essentially and I taught myself animation. And the way that I taught myself animation was through Flash. So near and dear to my heart. And a lot of the things I do are still going to have that bold graphic kind of style. Highly chimes in that Krita is really good. There's another recommendation. And then Maria mentions I have Krita, but haven't gotten to know it really well. I play a lot with animation, so I end up using Tahoma 2D 90% of the time. I'm not aware of Tahoma 2D. I'll have to look into that. But hey, yeah, that's great if it works for you. And I I think yeah, if you Krita does take a little time to get used to, as does any piece of software, in my opinion. But I've found that it's really good once you do. What really helped me with Krita and also Procreate, to be honest, is finding the right brush that fit me well. I found a brush in Krita that was just absolutely everything I wanted, and I was like, "Great, this is it." And so that made Krita that much better. And then with Procreate, I have a handful of brushes that I use, and it's sort of the same thing where I'm like, "Oh, this is great." Um, And then Evan says, like driving different types of car, each one does the same thing, but in minor variations. Definitely. That's absolutely right. There's no right car, right? The best car for you is the one that has the small blind spots. Like you don't want one that has big blind spots and it's comfortable for you to drive and within your price range and all that stuff. So that's a good analogy. All right. I'm putting off Kitsaro here, so we'll get back to the comments in a minute. But let me go ahead and get started on this one. And then we'll probably, already at 28 minutes, we'll probably wrap up for the day after Kitsaro here, just because I have to get to some other work as well. Uh, just never ends. All right, so coping mask. All right, we'll pick Kitsaro. Kitsaro is this lovely goldish yellow color. And what do I want to add here? I think let's try, might be fun to do a bit of green. We're going to try two things here just to see what happens. All right, so let's start by trying this kind of greenish color. And we'll get the bottom of Kitsaro. These are going to be very different, I think, once I'm done with them. We're going to get this greenish color and we're going to see what we can do here. Nothing's keeping that greenish color very much, so I might have to stick with good old normal, and then we'll just drop the opacity down a bit. Let's go with 65. All right, so we have this version. the green kind of picks up the shell of the green a little bit and it combines the two. So I don't mind that. But let's try turning that off for a second and we'll add another clipping mask. And I want to try to go more towards the reds and see what happens there. So if we get, I want to go even more toward reds. So let's just see kind of the difference, and we'll make some decisions after that. So this is what was in my head a little bit more than the green, and then after I started looking at it, I was like, oh, maybe it would work with the greens. So we have this as an option, and then we have this as an option. And because we're the artist, we're the designer, we get to just kind of decide stuff, and we get to kind of flip back and forth and see what do we like better, what do we not like. Now, I really dig some of the aspects of this one, but it's not singing for me the way that I want it to. So I think I am going to stick with my more of this orangish color for the bottom of him. And let's play through some. Well, I kind of like that color burn version. Again, it's not super apparent on my monitor, but it is on the iPad. It looks very much better on the iPad. So I think I'm going to go with that, and then I might try that green though on the top end of him because we're going to add kind of a gradient all the way down through. So let's see what happens if we stick with that kind of greenish color, and let's add it to the top and see what happens there. Yeah, see, I think I like that at the top a little bit more than I did at the bottom. So I kind of dig that. And then I think I might try to give the muzzle of his face a little bit also of something. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the muzzle part for a minute. And then I will go in and let's try and add a little bit of that reddish color underneath the muzzle too. This should give it a little bit of extra depth, I think. Yeah, I think I'm going to tone it down just a smidge because I don't want it to be in the way, and we'll add some shading too, but I kind of like that. Kind of gives it that extra little bit of element. All right, so that turned out better than I expected. I'm going to add in another layer and do a dark purple again and turn that into soft light, and we'll go in and do the harder cell shaded shadows in a second, but let's check in on the chat again. Maria clarifies Tahoma is an offshoot of OpenTunes. Oh, there you go. Both free apps and very nice. Tahoma is just that much more comfortable for me, but I like both. There you go. I did not know that OpenTunes had that offshoot, so good deal. I'm probably going to have to learn OpenTunes a little bit better because I would imagine that we'll be doing some animation in that from Animator Island coming up, but we'll see. So that's something I'm going to have to. I could just go chat with Ferdinand and watch his videos on OpenTunes. And then she mentions, I want to teach myself Blender, but feel I should understand 2D animation before going there. I don't think it hurts, right? I don't think it hurts to have those 2D, the 2D background first. You don't have to. I've met people who work both ways, who have started in 2D and then moved to 3D, and then I've worked with people who just started in 3D and they became great 3D animators. I think the thing that 2D excels in is you really get to wrap your head around the principles really well. So in that sense, I would agree with you that understanding that those 2D principles, I think, will really suit you well before you move to Blender. But I bet you could probably manage both. And Kylie says all of those apps have brushes that can be downloaded, imported, and edited too. Yep. At this point, most art programs will allow you to import brushes and things, and so that's great. I have I've made one brush in Procreate. It is right here. It's called Blocking Brush, and it is the most boring brush in the world, but it works really well for a lot of things that I need to do. Um, so I've not been able to wrap my head around uh, making and editing brushes. Like I just for some reason it just I don't know what's happening. Like I'm like, oh, I'll mess with this slider. I don't know what that did. So I think for me, I rely on the excellent technique and quality of other people's brushes, and it works. But you're right, you can edit and import and all kinds of things, brushes. In fact, when I first learned Krita and found that one magic brush that I loved, when the next version of Krita came out, they removed that brush from the defaults. And I was like freaking out. So I had to import every single time Krita updated, I had to import my old brush because it was the one I loved the most. And they never, for some reason, kept it around afterwards. But it's still there. I still downloaded it all the time and kept it. Okay. So for Kitsaro here, I already kind of have part of his shadow shape in place with this curved line here. So I'm just going to go through and trace that, um, because that was the line that I originally planned to put the shadow in, and then we can fill that in. So that whole side of him is going to be in shadow, and then we'll need to also do that for the shell. Like this, I think that will work. We'll try, see what happens. So that part will be in shadow. He has heavier shadows on him, I feel like, than a lot of the other characters for whatever reason. Just what I wanted to do with him. It just fit right. I enjoyed the forms that this creature has. And so in my head, I kind of have the light source coming from up or left. But again, I'm kind of fudging stuff at the same time. I'm not going super realistic here with light sources and stuff. I'm just kind of playing around, and what works will work, and what doesn't work, we'll just take out. And then I need to get the this belly area a little bit in shadow, I think. So let's try this and see what happens. All right. So I think that will be good on the shadows, but only one way to tell is to turn it into soft light and see how it goes. Yeah, I think it's looking pretty good. So now I have a decision to make. I can keep that black line along the side there, or I could take that out. Um, I think for now I'm going to leave it, but I'm going to have to think about it because I might want to take it out later. Now the last thing is for this particular character, and actually there's two last things. One, I don't like where this shell shadow is hitting, so I'm going to just drop that down a smidge. I don't know if you saw what I did there, but previously you had this tiny little bit right there, in the other color, and I didn't like that. So uh, I want to give a little more breathing room in for that shadow. So I extended the shadow down a little bit. And again, because I'm just making stuff up a little bit here, it's no big deal. Hiley says, kind of makes it look metal. I'm not sure which part you're referring to regarding the metal. My bad. I didn't look over fast enough. And Dylan says, hi. Hey, Dylan. Good to have you. There is a creature design, which I can't show you because it's buried in with a bunch of other secret ones. But I put in a particular shading on the top of it, and it turned it like super metally looking. And I don't know if I like it or not, so I might change it, but we'll see. So anyway, the last thing I'm going to do for this particular characters is I think I'm going to go in and add a few highlights, which I don't do on all the characters, but for this one, I feel like it will suit it well. So I'm going to just grab just a nice easy yellow, and I'm going to go ahead and put in just a little bit of highlight. And I don't think I made it a clipping mask, so let me do that real quick. There we go. And I don't know if this will work. I think it will. It should work. But some of the characters in this game, I like to just add that extra pop of highlight. And so I'm going to do that on this one, and we'll see what happens. And we'll add it on the nose. And I think even the eyes, we're going to get a little bit. Yeah. And then we will turn that into something like probably screen. Maybe lighten. Screen, lighten. Yeah, screen works. I think we're going to go with screen. So there's just that little bit of subtle detailing on the eyes, on the ears, top of the head, that sort of thing. Just a little bit of extra pop of lighting, which I think elevates it just a little bit more. And I like that, and I think that it works well. So it's not something I do for every character, but it's those little bits of detail that I think really um, add to things and really make it something special. So cool beans. Well, that's going to wrap up the 2 characters I think I'm going to do for today. And then I've still got a few to do, so I think I'll probably try and pop back on and do another live stream either maybe tomorrow or this weekend. So if you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe, and it'll give you a notification. But I bet most of you have already subscribed because I see you guys a lot here, and I appreciate it. I just, as I always say, I really thank you for showing up and hanging out for a bit, chatting. We got some really interesting information on different pieces of software and some offshoots of other pieces of software. So thanks for chiming in on that stuff, and hopefully people can check those things out. And that's about it for today. So thanks for showing up, everybody, and I will keep you posted on when the next one is. Probably next live stream coming at you tomorrow, maybe sometime similar time frame, or if I can on Saturday, which is my birthday. So maybe we'll have a birthday live stream. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, that's it for now, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.